Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. We're live and national, happy to chat with you. Open phones across America. That's where you get to call in and sound off on everything that's going on, and we're talking about a lot of stuff tonight, from the Epstein list to DEI to you name it. We're talking about it. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And the big story we've been talking about today is phase one, the first phase of the Epstein files has been released. And it's been pretty interesting, right? I'm lying, right? It's nearly not that interesting. Honestly, I got to say it's shaping up to be a big nothing burger so far, right? This is out there. They've released the information to the cadre of influencers and digital reporters and traditional reporters in the White House and a handful of others to disseminate to the public. But I haven't gotten too much dissemination other than people saying, we got this big binder that says the Epstein files on it. And I guess we'll have to wait till tomorrow. But one would have thought, right? They would have been parsing through it so that we could keep everybody in America up to speed on what's going on at night. Anyway, the Jeffrey Epstein contact list was released by AG Pam Bondi. And here's what we know so far. Many of the documents were already released during the Ghislaine Maxwell federal crime trial, for the crimes she committed, which she's gotten a several decades-long sentence, and they include flight logs, an evidence list, a contact book, and a redacted masseuse list, quote-unquote, which is believed to refer to Epstein's victims, right? They are the alleged masseuses. Many, however, like Ghislaine Maxwell and others, have denied their wrongdoing, right? You got Prince Andrew, who also says he's done nothing wrong. Jean-Luc Brunel, the French modeling agent who, like Epstein, died in jail awaiting his trial. These people are all saying, no, didn't do it. Now, the logs also show that prominent Epstein accuser, Virginia Giuffre, known as Virginia Roberts at the time, flew with him to and from the U.S. Virgin Islands. Epstein died in jail at the age of 66 back in 2019, and while he was waiting his federal charges on trafficking. Now, the potential client list, this has been an issue in the public interest for a while, and everybody wants to know who's on it, what's going on. From what I see, I haven't seen a new name today, maybe one that I haven't seen before. But a federal court ordered thousands of pages of sealed records to be made public last year. And they revealed back then about 200 names, many of which belonged to people who were not accused of any crimes. Many people named in the contact book, dated from 2003 to 2004, on Thursday, were also not accused of any crimes in connection with Epstein, including the actor Alec Baldwin, billionaire Richard Branson, former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg, to name a few. Epstein also had entries for rock star Mick Jagger, Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, actors Dustin Hoffman, Elizabeth Hurley, Michael Jackson, and many others, including members of the Kennedy family and other prominent families. I mean, this is a who's who of, philanthropy in Hollywood. He was known to socialize with people with a lot of money. So far, I haven't told you anything you didn't know years ago, right? And I'm waiting for this big news to drop. I don't understand what's happening. I hate it when there's, anticlimactic things, right? I know everybody was, and this is why I don't sleep with my tinfoil hat on. I'm not saying the stuff didn't happen. It happened. It's just, how do you appease a public that's dissatisfied with what went down, but yet still look like you're trying to hold people accountable? And of course, somebody's going to get in trouble somewhere, right? You've got the feds in New York that are allegedly withholding some documents that need to be made public. So maybe some heads will roll there. Who knows? Maybe we'll even see a slap on the wrist. But I don't know that of these 200 names, these big names, I don't know that we're going to see Mick Jagger arrested, right? I don't think that we're going to see these many now deceased, but even the living members of the Kennedy family arrested. These are, I think, unreasonable expectations. And listen, I hope I'm wrong. Alina Habba was out there today talking about just that, saying, look, I expect charges to be filed. And listen, I do too. I expect charges to be filed. I expect people to go to jail when we're able to do that. I guess my skepticism is, are we going to be able to do that? How do you charge these people, that many of which are not even alive, right? And those that are, this has been going on forever and a day. Well, we'll see. Maybe I will eat these words, and I will happily eat these words. Happily. I'll be happy to say, 10 days from now, 5 days from now, tomorrow, when they, round everybody up for their participation in trafficking these young girls and these other crimes, other associated crimes. I just don't see it. I think that the big win here is that we cracked the ring, that we know who's behind it, we know who was involved, and this in effect neuters them, right? They can't really participate in this type of thing anymore because the secret's out. Is that worse than jail? No, but pretty effective, right? Because now they're on notice, and if they continue their shenanigans, doing their thing, calling their billionaire broker friends to be like, hey, listen, can you get me a quote-unquote massage? Yeah, maybe get me a 12-year-old, these sick people. They're going to get caught because now, the cat has been out of the bag for a while. But I want you to hear this clip of, actually, too late now. If I go into this, I'll take up too much time. But we do have one here. Count, give me that one clip that we have that's 40-something seconds.
Attorney General Pam Bondi is demanding that the FBI turn over thousands of pages that were missing related to Jeffrey Epstein's investigation by the Southern District of New York, setting a strict Friday deadline for the full disclosure. In a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel, Bondi said that she was tipped off after having only been handed over roughly 200 pages from FBI, while the rest remained hidden at the New York field office of the Bureau. She's now ordered the full and complete Epstein files to be turned into her by Friday, including all records, audio and video recordings, and client information.
So tomorrow, the 28th, is the deadline. Let's see what happens by then. And again, I guess if you don't get it, what do? You start holding people in contempt. You start to file charges that way. Maybe those are the people that we're going to see get in trouble. I don't know. But I don't hold my breath for a lot of these things. I really don't. I don't hold my breath for anything. That's just because I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon at times. And I'm just like, whatever. What do you think? Okay. So anyway, I want to get into that. I want to talk a little bit about DEI, the military, the budget process, and so much more. I mean, it's so much to discuss. Jeffrey Epstein, all of that. So we're going to jump into a lot today. And stick with me. Of course, the phone number, if you want to join us, we're live. We're national. 833-482-5337 is the phone number. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I said what I said, which is that we do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies. But we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British. Of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and, by extension, American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
That is Starmer from the UK, and he's going back and forth with Vice President J.D. Vance in the Oval Office, discussing his remarks on free speech. And I'm glad that he doubled down and he told him right in his face, because he seemed to have a problem with the fact that people were being arrested for thinking of praying outside of the established norms that they have in the UK. And again, they're allowed to have their own rules, as the vice president alluded to. But the Prime Minister, they're doubling down, right? So just interesting exchange, and I'm glad that we're not all getting along and going along, as the saying goes. But there's plenty going on in D.C., whether it's discussions on free speech, DEI being abolished, the Epstein list being released, and cleaning up the military, because every day we see the detriment that was the result of DEI. So I want to talk about all of that stuff and a whole lot more with somebody who campaigned vigorously for his position as the congressman for the 8th District in Arizona. Congressman, congratulations. Abe Hamadeh, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Rich.
Yes, sir. So let's talk about this. First, what's your reaction to what happened between J.D. Vance and Mr. Starmer?
I loved what the vice president did, because we all know what Apple's doing, what the UK is doing right now with their laws, trying to bully Apple to do. What I'm just surprised by is Apple actually conceded to it. We understand that Apple never did that in the United States when the FBI and so many intelligence agencies were trying to access the phones of criminals here at home and of some even terrorists, and Apple never did. And yet they were so easily to capitulate to the UK. So what Vice President did, I think, was exactly the right move, and he did it in a very classy way. And I think that lunch conversation, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall.
Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. Now, you've been making a lot of headlines since getting sworn in a month ago, a little more than a month ago, as a member of the House of Representatives. And recently you were up in the air in a fighter jet. Tell us about this.
Oh, that was a great experience. So I have the privilege to represent so many of the Luke Air Force Base airmen in my district. And Luke Air Force Base is a real key, important part of Arizona and the military. So primarily they fly F-35s out of Luke Air Force Base now, and they were flying the F-16s, but now this is the last month of Luke Air Force Base flying the F-16s. It's getting moved to another air base in New Mexico. So I had the honor of flying one of the last F-16 flights out of Luke. And I'll tell you what, Rich, it was quite an experience, hitting 7.2 Gs, going supersonic, and just being with the best pilots in the world. And I'm so proud of our military and that these fine guys have that the stones to do it, because it was truly it was an incredible experience. But I give a lot more credit to them.
Now that we're talking about this, what was your sense, Congressman, about the morale, the general sense you got from your fly along that day? How are people responding to the Trump presidency? Are they enthused? Are they encouraged? If we look at recruitment numbers, it looks like it's going up by a lot. I would suppose that people are kind of enthused by this, but you were there and I wasn't. So your thoughts?
No, it was very enthusiastic, and typically the military tries to keep their political views a little bit quieter, but I'll tell you what, they could not avoid showing their emotion that President Trump is in office, and that they feel like America's back and that our military is strong again, and that we're going to respect our military personnel. So that's what the mood was. That was the conversations. And I'm not going to name names to not get anybody in trouble, but I will tell you they were so excited. They a lot of them suffered with the COVID vaccine that Joe Biden tried to push on them. And so a lot of them really appreciate that President Trump's taking such a bold actions. And it's reflected right now in the recruitment numbers. I mean, the military all across the board is hitting record high. This is like the best in 20 years numbers. So people are excited to once again be a part of the greatest lethal fighting force. And the credit not just President Trump, but also Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth as well, because those type of leaders are magnetic, and it's clearly showing and reflected in the numbers.
Now, Congressman, let's talk a little bit about what's going on. Yesterday evening, you guys were able to cast your vote the night before for the budget resolution to create that framework, the path forward to implement Trump's agenda. And I thought that was a good move. Of course, critics have something to say all the time. But that being said, what's the vibe like? It was a very close call on the vote.
I will be honest, Rich. I'll give you a behind-the-scenes perspective on it. So we were waiting on the House floor for quite a while for that bill to come up. And because, we had already voted on 2 other bills right before. Mm-hmm. So at the time, we were told that the vote was being postponed and it's not going to happen that night. So pretty much I went back to my office, was ready to go home. A lot of people were leaving the Capitol. And then suddenly they called us back in. So clearly there is a lot of negotiations happening and conversations happening. And I was very impressed that Speaker Mike Johnson was able to have a united caucus, a united Republican conference, because it was, I think it caught people off. They were impressed by that it actually happened, and I was too, because there were a lot of holdouts. And, they have their reasonings, I understand, but right now we have to be unified. We can't show any division, and we got to trust that President Trump and this America First agenda. So I was pleased to see that we are still on the right track, because, the House is in a better position to control the budget than the Senate. So at least now it gives optimism that we have our act together and that we're going to deliver the results to President Trump once it goes to the Senate.
Folks, you are on with Congressman Abe Hamadeh, a Republican from Arizona. He's in the 8th District. He's been with us many times. This is his first time as congressman, and I'm very happy to hear that he's there and he's doing his thing. And, Congressman, there's a bunch going on, right? I mean, you have your work, the committee work that you're doing. The administration has so much work. There's domestic policy. There's intelligence issues. There's all sorts of things. So I want to kind of parse some of those initiatives with you and see some of the things you're working on, some of the things you're doing to stop China from doing what they do, and some of the other issues that are going on domestically when we come back. And everybody else, feel free to give us a call. 833-482-5337 is the phone number. Again, we're on with Congressman Abe Hamadeh, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
From the talks with Canada and Mexico so far, are you not seeing the progress that you wanted in order to...
I don't see it at all. No, not on drugs. We've done a great job.
If you look at Tom Homan, he's been incredible, and Christie, they've done a great job in terms of the border. But the drugs continue to pour into our country, killing hundreds of thousands of people. We're losing substantially more than 100,000 people. I mean, dead. They're dead. The families are destroyed after that happens. So it's not just that. That's the ultimate. But the families are absolutely destroyed. The drugs come in through Mexico. They come, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them come from China. And that's why we did that. It's 10 plus 10. Okay, was there confusion on that?
There was, sir, yeah.
Okay, 10 plus 10, it's a second 10. And I think you're going to see, eventually you're going to see drugs stopping, because the country should not be allowing those drugs to come into the United States of America, and we're not going to allow it to happen.
That, of course, President Trump today in the White House discussing what China's doing, its involvement with Mexico on drugs and other issues there that tie directly into tariffs. And other reports out there that say that Mexico is willing to start sending us cartel members, extraditing them to the United States. I think it's a step in the right direction, but how do we ultimately slow down China, who's a bad operator in every sense, and doing it on every front that they can do it on, the southern front, the northern front, you name it, they're there. I want to bring Congressman Abe Hamadeh from Arizona back into the conversation to get his response to that and to learn about what he's doing in terms of his work, his legislative work, to slow down China as well. Congressman, welcome back.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, that was absolutely great to hear President Trump keep applying the pressure to not only Mexico and Canada, which are facilitators from the Communist Chinese Party. What we know with the fentanyl that's been pouring across our southern border under the Biden administration so aggressively. But China not only is waging a war on the American people through opioid use and fentanyl, but they're also waging an information warfare, Rich. On my first day in office, I walked through the halls and I opened my door, and on the floor over there, they had all these newspapers of the day that they drop off, and there's the usual suspects. But then what was interesting was the China Daily News newspaper was delivered, and you got to you got to inspect it to see what it actually is. But it's literally propaganda paid for by the Communist Chinese Party, and
right inside the halls of Congress.
Right, to every single member. So every single member of Congress, every senator gets this paper. And I said this was unacceptable. Why are we allowing for them to use taxpayer resources to have this delivery? Don't care if it's free. It's the fact that they're actively using an information warfare. Because some of these staff, Rich, as you know, some of these staff on the Hill, they may, these newspapers, it's not like it's overtly propaganda. It's not like it's overtly notified that this is paid for by a foreign government.
Right.
You got to research it. So it's obviously done to influence not only members of Congress, but their staff, which is so critical. So I introduced legislation to ban the China Daily newspaper from being passed in the Congress. If they want to purchase it on their own, they are more than welcome to. But I want to ban that. We can't pass them out using taxpayer resources.
So let's how does this work? Is this something that you have to, I guess, bring to committee, get it out of committee, and then get some support, or either way, just bring it to the floor for a full vote? And if so, what stage of that process are you in?
It's still in the beginning stages. We had a lot of co-sponsors on the bill, a lot of moderates, a lot of MAGA. I mean, it was unified. And right now, we're still waiting for it to get to a committee. But what I like about this, it's not a bill, it's a resolution. So a resolution is a lot easier because all it has to do is pass the House to take into effect. Because this is only affecting buildings that are occupied with the House of Representatives. So I think those bills those resolutions tend to be easier because it doesn't have to go through the Senate and then go to the president's desk, which could take a while. So I want to put my colleagues on record. I want to see if China has influenced so many of them, like I suspect, in the Democrat Party, because how could anybody be opposed to stopping foreign government like the Communist Chinese from spreading their propaganda in the halls of Congress? I want to put them on the record.
Yeah, amen to that. Folks, again, we're on with Abe Hamadeh. He's a congressman from Arizona. He's an attorney. He served in the United States military doing intelligence work. And now he's taken on China and their propaganda. And good for you. I'm glad you're doing that because you're right. this is how they do it, right? They try to affect everybody. It's death by 1,000 cuts every single time. They want to get every staff member, everybody everywhere. They want to influence other members of the media. They'll do everything they can to try and change popular opinion. All you got to do is scroll through social media to see the amount of propaganda that's out there, Congressman. It's
yeah, absolutely. That's why I was so proud to have it to be my. It's kind of disappointing. I shouldn't have that. I shouldn't have to be the one to take the charge. I'm a freshman congressman. There's been plenty of congressmen that have been getting the China Daily newspaper, and I believe Senator Jim Banks, back when he was in the House back in 2018, 2019, he attempted this once before. So, it's been attempted, but I'm just surprised it's still allowed. But I'm really looking forward to more legislation. I know one of my big ones, Rich, something that you and I both care about deeply, is election integrity. And I was probably, besides President Trump, and I'm probably one of the biggest victims of election integrity. But I always say the victims of it were the Arizonans. We've seen what this illegitimate AG in Arizona is doing by going after Trump's alternate electors from 2020. She just totally politicized her office. So we got to make sure election integrity is done at the federal level, or else we're never going to be able to win elections, because the Democrats they have the huge operation and apparatus, and they always know how to rig these elections. Look at California. My God, they were counting votes for 6 weeks, Rich, and it all went to the Democrat, coincidentally.
Yeah, it always does. Now, Abe Hamadeh, in the couple of minutes we have left remaining, I want to make sure I get your take on this. Last night I had a very good conversation with one of your colleagues, Beth Van Dyne, and she was, optimistic, I would say, about the forward trajectory of the Trump initiatives that came forth from this resolution yesterday of, $2 trillion in spending cuts, reinstating the Trump tax cuts, and all of the no tax on tips, Social Security, and overtime. Some critics are saying that there's not enough, it's a $4.5 trillion bill. It's not enough to cover all of that. But what are your thoughts on how this goes in the Senate? Obviously, the Senate doesn't share the zeal that the House does, but I'm hopeful that we'll get to a common ground. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we did this week was a House resolution to start the process of the budget. So now, next week and in the first couple weeks of March, you're going to start to see all the committees working on the budget. So what we did was a blueprint, and yeah, I agree with my colleague and my neighbor. She's on the same floor as me. But I'm optimistic, ultimately, that we are able to unite the conference on this blueprint. And, the details are going to be hashed out. And ultimately, I think we're going to have a unified front heading it into the Senate. And I think that's going to impress a lot of people that we were able to get it done on the House side, because the House side is going to have a lot more savings and cuts. We're going to cut all the unnecessary spending, and we're going to make up for it with not just the tax cuts are going to boost the economy big time, Rich. So the projections, I think, are slightly off, and they're not accounting even Trump's tariffs, which are going to bring in hundreds of billions of dollars of added revenue. So I'm more optimistic, ultimately, especially after what we witnessed this week. And we're going to have the Senate, by the way, I would give credit a lot to Majority Leader John Thune. If you see the way he operates, and he got all of the Republican, President Trump's cabinet picks in, I think that's a good signal that he's going to be able to get a budget through the Senate, and we're going to deliver it to President Trump.
All right. Hey, listen, I'll take your word for it. I know he had a very closeness with McConnell. I don't know if it was just professional collegiality or loyalty. So I've always been kind of cautiously optimistic when it comes to Senator Thune. But I like what you're saying, and I love what you're doing. Abe Hamadeh, thank you, sir. Let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the great work that you're doing and how they could support that work.
Absolutely. They can go to my website at abe4az.com, abe4az, or they can find me on X at Abraham Hamadeh.
Outstanding. Well, Godspeed to you, Congressman. We appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
You bet. And amigos, we continue the conversation with you all, the American people. We'll continue our conversation on DOGE, on what Secretary Lutnick said is the real goal of President Trump when it comes to the IRS. All of that's coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, think about it. Donald Trump announces the External Revenue Service, and his goal is very simple. His goal is to abolish the Internal Revenue Service and let all the outsiders pay. I mean, this is someone who is focused on America.
That is Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, again, about a week ago, making these comments and reiterating exactly what Trump is looking to do, abolish the IRS. And this is, again, ideology after my own heart. I would love to see a government that is very bare bones. I know not a lot of people are as radical as I am with this stuff, but I am. I've seen small things. I've been to, lots of small things. And I'm talking about small churches, small organizations, small colleges. Just things work when they're small. You can do a lot with a little. And I know it's pie in the sky. This is my utopian thinking that, we can one day have a society where everybody has, it's the Wild West. 2 guns, 1 on each hip, not paying taxes, dirt roads. I should have been a cowboy, right? But it may not happen, right? It may not happen, but as close to that as we can get. And if you want to put asphalt and pave the road or go to your neighbors and create a little collective in your neighborhood and say, we're going to pave this road, we're going to pave our main street, let's get together, maybe, let the municipalities decide for themselves, let the states decide for themselves, let everybody just be free. Now, I know my radical libertarian streak is showing right now, but ultimately, we don't need an IRS. And we've had so many conversations with so many brilliant economists that always point out that we didn't have, we didn't always have an IRS. We didn't always have federal income tax. That's a good thing that we didn't always have it, because I don't think we need it. The government needs it to keep doing what they do. And now that the Doge people are working so diligently to expose all this stuff, and whatever side of this you're on, right? If you're on the side that, oh my gosh, Elon Musk is Satan himself, and I can't believe he wants to stop waste, fraud, and abuse in our government. He wants to stop people from spending things and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Even if you're on that side, hopefully you'll agree. Maybe you don't like the waste or fraud or abuse that he's pointing out, but there's got to be some waste and fraud that you don't like, right? There's got to be just some bloated spending somewhere that you think that's not necessary. So let's just imagine we can live in a world where we don't have to foot the bill for absolutely everything. I understand it's expensive to run a country. I get it. I really do. There's always going to be an expense. I was president of a condo association some years ago, a bunch of years ago, like more than 20, and or just about 20. And I can tell you that it was a small organization, small building, small board, and it was still difficult to manage. Just imagine when things get bigger and bigger, like this administration that Trump has to contend with, and dealing with these disparate factions of Congress. It's a yeoman's task. So I get it, and I have nothing but respect for the man. I really do. I think this is a great thing. But the closer that we can get to doing things very independently, very, very lean, very smart, that's how we got to do it. We got to be lean. We got to be smart, and stop focusing on all this massive spending. Really, when that statistic came out yesterday, and I guess it haunted me because that was the case in New Jersey for many years. The biggest growth for employment was in the public sector. Government agencies were hiring people. And again, this is not a slight at any government workers. You know, we had one call last night who was upset with me for my comments. I've had a bunch of people on inbox, and I'm not trying to insult people, but I know it comes across that way because I've been doing this for a long time. In 2003, I remember people being angry at me because I was saying things, and they said, "Why are you disparaging public service?" And I was saying, I'm not disparaging public service. I'm just disparaging government in general. I don't think we need all of these positions. I don't think we need such an expansive, massive government. Because that's what I want to delegitimize, the need for such a thing, for such an office, for such employment to even exist. Because I don't want to delegitimize the people. They're just good people that said, oh, you want a job? I happen to have the skills for that job. Hire me. And they were hired. They're not guilty of anything. But the people that put this together, right, this massive bureaucracy, these are the people that we have to, a bone to pick with, right? These are the people that we have to make sure we steer clear of, and that we keep them away from our government, and that we keep some small government conservatives around as long as we can, as we're making policy and moving forward, implementing the agenda that's being charted right now in Washington. That's the only way. And I don't know how many more ways to say it, but this is what we have to do. We have to shrink the size of government. And for everybody that's thinking, yeah, but it's 32, 33, whatever the number is, right? $1 trillion of debt. You know, cutting a trillion here and a trillion there isn't going to cut it. I mean, really, to make the crassest example possible, I don't know, you got to go to the bathroom really bad to relieve yourself one way or another. You may not be able to do it all, but you got to let something out. You got to do something, right? You're about to bust. We're about to bust. We can't withstand. So, yeah, we got to take the trillion, then the 2 trillion, then the 3 trillion. Then we got to keep going. We can't sit here and say, oh, 3 trillion is not enough. Let's just keep spending. That's not an answer. That's not a solution. And that's not a win. Anyway, folks, we're coming right back with your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, to the phones we go. Open phones across America. Let's check in with our callers. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. Let's go to Steve calling us from Atlanta, Georgia on WGKA. Steve, go right ahead, sir.
Thanks for taking my call, Mr. Valdez.
Yes, sir.
Hey, so how do you feel about paying congressmen a bonus if the GDP goes up? Like as a percentage, whatever that percentage is, pay them a bonus. As
I
GDP,
guess. I mean, I don't know that it's Congress's job to manage GDP, but I'm all for a performance-based incentive. I think that's always a relatively good idea. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, and I think the same way, if we tie it to metrics like if we're able to shrink the size of government and the spending in government, you'll get more on your salary, and if every time the government grows and we spend more money, you'll get less on your salary. I think that would be a great way to run Congress. But, I don't know that they would allow that, Steve.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Steve in Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. And I wanted to get to my buddy in Boise, but the music means we got to go. So stick with me, brother. We're coming your way soon. Folks, it's Rich Valdez. We're here with you live for not much longer, actually. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. Now, if you're in an area where we're coming back, then we're coming back. But if not, I'll see you soon. Don't go anywhere, or stick around, or go somewhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And I want to welcome you to another hour of the program. Thanks for sticking around. I know I have the most confusing sign-offs at the end of each hour where you think I'm going home, going to sleep. Then I come back with another hour, more exciting talk and conversation and calls and all that. Of course, by the way, if you want to join the show, give us a call, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And a bunch of things I want to talk about. Of course, the Epstein files have been released. I don't know that there was much that we didn't know in there. I'm waiting for somebody to prove me wrong on that. But the Thursday edition of the Epstein files, in my opinion, seems like a big nothing burger thus far. I can't label it any other way. All right, I thought we were going to see something like, you'd heard about these, but what about these? No, I think every name that I saw in there, I mean, maybe I don't remember seeing Mick Jagger or Alec Baldwin, but my day today is the same as it was yesterday. It's not earth-changing. Maybe tomorrow will be the earth-changing day where they're like, oh my gosh, now we're doing this. And we're going to spend some time on that in a couple of minutes. But I also want to give you some of the other things that are going on. And maybe it's, for good reason, so that we can cover more stories here. But Trump is adding 10% to the tariff on Mexico to kick in on March 4th because he says that there's just too much going on. Fentanyl continues to pour into the country. No bueno. And he says Canada has to do a lot more. Listen to this.
Mr. President, on our fentanyl, Mr. President, less than 1% of all fentanyl that comes into the U.S. is apprehended at the Canadian border. So why use fentanyl as a reason?
Because they should be apprehending much more. They're only apprehending 1%. You're right about that. It's a little more than that. But they should be apprehending much more because a lot comes through Canada. And as Mexico gets stronger in terms of the border, it goes up to Canada. And a lot of drugs are coming in through Canada. We can't have that.
That, of course, President Trump today in the White House explaining what's going on with Canada in a conversation he had with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Mr. Starmer. I forget his first name. Anyway, Kieran Starmer is his name. And President Trump says that he plans to impose tariffs on Mexico and Canada starting Tuesday, after suggesting just last week that he was going to delay them for another month. I think now they're coming back. And this was something he posted on Truth Social, saying that he's also doubling the 10% universal tariff on imports to China from 10% to 20%, so 10 plus 10. Now, Trump in the past has repeated, his desire to have tariffs, and it's a good thing, right? Especially when it's on China. I think we want to discourage trade with China. It's the best way I can put it. We want to discourage it. And he ended with saying, we can't allow this scourge to continue to harm the USA, and therefore, until it stops or is seriously limited, the proposed tariffs are scheduled to go into effect on March 4th will indeed go into effect as scheduled. So that is El Trumpito. Now, there's also some other news, right? Because you've got President Trump reacting to some other things. Well, what other things? I'll tell you. Andrew Tate. Now, you may not know him, but he's a kickboxer who became a very large internet personality, an influencer on all of the social media. And he had these women that were selling services, like video services, not necessarily lewd. I don't think that was ever the charge, but he was charged with trafficking these women in order to provide companionship and chatting services and whatever via Zoom or whatever it is they do, OnlyFans, etc. and he was charged in Romania. Now, there's been a lot of talk about these charges being trumped up charges, similar to what happened to President Trump, similar to what happened to Rod Blagojevich, similar to what's happened to a lot of people who get into it with people. And officials in Romania charged Mr. Tate and his brother with this and locked them up. Well, they're free now, and I got a clip of the audio of them being released. Listen to this.
Andrew, can you sign a baseball, please?
Listen. We live in a democratic society where it's innocent until proven guilty, and I think my brother and I are largely misunderstood. There's a lot of opinions about us, a lot of things that go around about us on the internet. We've yet to be convicted of any crime in our lives ever. We have no criminal record anywhere on the planet ever. Our case was dismissed on the 19th of December in Romania under the Biden administration. And our prosecutor recently decided, because we have no active indictment in court, to let us go and return. This is the democratic society. It's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, as my brother and I are. And I think it's extremely important that we stop allowing media spin, wrap-up smears, lies, or carefully constructed narratives from George Soros-funded operations trying to destroy the reputations of good people who have no intention to do anything other than follow the law.
Andrew, what about President Trump? Can you sign my base? Andrew.
Now, the question there being, what about President Trump? Well, President Trump responded to the news of social media personality Andrew Tate returning to the United States following the controversial figure's legal battles in Romania. And he was speaking at a press conference that we talked about earlier alongside Prime Minister Keir Starmer from the UK, saying, "I know nothing about it," when he was asked about the Tate brothers' arrival in Florida, saying, "I will catch up with the story in due time." This is Mr. Starmer's response. And again, Andrew Tate and his brother, Tristan, had been in Romania facing charges of human trafficking, sexual misconduct, and money laundering. Their case has gotten lots of attention all over the place. And the brothers, who deny all the accusations, as you just heard, were under a travel ban as part of the criminal investigation as it continued. However, the Romanian government recently lifted the restrictions, allowing them to return to the U.S. So now they're back. Trump's brief comment on Tate's return contrasts very sharply with what Governor DeSantis had to say, because Governor DeSantis wasn't pleased. After their arrival in Florida, DeSantis spoke out, saying, "Florida is not a place where you're welcome with that type of conduct." Following their arrival today, or Thursday, State Attorney General James Utmeyer took to social media to announce that his office would conduct a preliminary inquiry into the Tate brothers. The Tates had just landed in Fort Lauderdale after authorities lifted the travel restrictions that were on them for quite some time. And again, Tate was infamous, and is infamous, I should say, for something he created called the Manosphere, which is an online movement that promoted masculinity, conservative values, and basically flat out rejected feminism. The Tate brothers have been accused of plenty of things, and they've been the source of controversy for a couple of years now. And I hear some of the things they say, and I'm like, wow, that's wild. And I hear a lot of the things they say, and I go, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So I don't think they're that controversial myself. But prior to the travel ban in the UK, U.S. officials had discussed Tate's case with the Romanian government, and the Romanian foreign minister, Emil Hrzanau, confirmed a meeting with U.S. envoy Richard Grenell, but denied that the government faced any pressure to make any moves on behalf of the U.S. government. The diplomatic effort gained attention when Richard Grenell, who is President Trump's envoy for special missions, met with the foreign minister from Romania at the Munich Security Conference to discuss the case. So that's the story there. And again, the Tate brothers, who have they're British citizens who have dual citizenship. They're also U.S. citizens. They were arrested back in 2022, formally indicted last year, and they still looks like they still face charges of operating a criminal ring that lured women to Romania, where they were allegedly sexually exploited. Now, Tate says his case was dropped in December of 2019. The article I'm reading from Newsweek, published today, right? I believe it's published today. Let me double check that. Yeah, published today at 4:36 in the afternoon, Eastern time, says that there are still charges facing these guys. So, again, I don't know what the resolution is. I'll look into that and give you an update. But that's it. And I guess where we go from here, I don't know. But Tate had previously said that he would move back to the U.S. if Trump won the election in November, exclaiming MAGA. And that's what he told Newsweek at the time. So I'll keep you up to speed on what's going on with that stuff. Plus, the Epstein stuff is coming up next. Since we're talking about trafficking, we're going to get into that. Keep it locked right here. And, of course, your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
With his apparent suicide in his jail cell in 2019, hope for answers about Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring faded. But Attorney General Pam Bondi insists her Department of Justice will release as much information as possible.
This will make you sick. 200 victims. 200. So we have over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information.
That stunning number of victims, one reason Senator Marsha Blackburn this week sent a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel, asking him to make public the names of Epstein's associates that are listed in the flight logs of his private jet and in Ghislaine Maxwell's Little Black Book. Maxwell was a former British socialite found guilty of child sex trafficking, largely for her work assisting Jeffrey Epstein.
Every piece of information is like putting a puzzle together. You get one piece and that leads you to the next two or three.
So you think this is much bigger than Jeffrey Epstein?
Oh yes, absolutely. There was a global network. This is not about celebrity. This is about ending this practice of human trafficking and sex trafficking and ending this modern day slavery.
The Attorney General releasing binders marked unclassified to conservative commentators. Later, though, in a letter accusing the FBI of withholding documents, directing Kash Patel to release them by Friday morning. Photos from Jeffrey Epstein's past show him associating with everyone from Prince Andrew to former President Clinton to current President Donald Trump. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzau.
So that's what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein. Again, not a ton of new information, but it's starting to trickle out. I guess they want to start the information flow as of now because tomorrow's the deadline, and I guess there's going to be some more information that's released. But as of now, not a ton of new information. At least I haven't seen it. If you've seen it, let me know. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And what I find interesting about all of this is that something's going to happen, right? What and how with who, I don't know. Will it be the United States Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York for withholding information? Will heads roll? Will there be reprimands? Will someone be fired? Worse, will someone be charged with a crime? I don't know. Are there other instances of malfeasance that can be clearly outlined here, where we'll see a big Friday dump of information from the AG's office, or maybe a bunch of indictments? I don't know. I think everybody's kind of at the edge of their seat, but I do not suspect that to happen. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope somebody right now in Foggy Bottom is saying, that Valdez, he's always taking the thunder, the wind out of our sails. Right when we think we're going to have justice for this and that, he's always saying, don't hold your breath. And hopefully somebody wants to shut me up so I can get on the mic tomorrow and say, well, folks, I was wrong. I was wrong. They just arrested 200 people for doing X, Y, and Z. But I don't know. I really don't know. Now, I would suspect that a lot of the people that are involved in this are running scared, and they know who they are. You know, we know who we know, but those that we don't know, I'm pretty sure they're walking a little funny today, right? They're walking around thinking, uh-oh, this may not be good for me. So maybe this is part of the big head fake, and that would make the most sense, right? And to establish the line of connection with people that can disseminate the information quickly, and then say, all right, here's the information you already knew, a review, boom, Thursday. And Friday, here we go. Here's all the info, and we already know who to send it to because we just met with you guys yesterday at the White House, and now you're ready to go. Your lines of communication are open. Let her rip. And smart strategy. Very, very smart. And that could very well be why today was somewhat anticlimactic, and the next shoe to drop might be the big deal. In my years working with James O'Keefe, that was how we did it, right? We'd say, once we had everything we needed, we'd say, oh, blah, 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 this is this. Knowing we already had the part 2 in the bag. Once you have everything in the can, then you're good. So maybe that's exactly what's going on here, and that's what I would suspect. But either way, I still don't think we see any major, who's going to go to jail? Jeffrey Epstein? He's dead, allegedly, at his own hand. Ghislaine Maxwell, she's already in jail. Prince Andrew? All right, maybe. But what does that do for America? These guys are, in my opinion, I'm sure guilty and whatever the case is. But my point is, these are Johns. These are customers of a service, an illegal service, a horrible one. But they're not the ones that are running the show. Even though Epstein was the ops manager, if you will, I don't know that he was running the show. Who's really running the show? That is what I think everybody wants to know. And that's the tip of the spear that we need to find to go after that. Cut off the head of the dragon. Anyway, so that's the story there. Now, when we come back, I want you to hear from Alina Habba. Alina Habba is the White House counselor. She says that she expects accountability to ensue, and that she believes this is very shocking, and that the rest of us are going to be equally as shocked. So keep it locked right here. I'm going to get to your calls as well. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, if you missed any of the interviews that we've done throughout the week on this program, go check it out absolutely free at richvaldez.com. You can listen to any one of these episodes. Just stream it right from the website. You can also get a link to our YouTube if you want to watch the video, like a static picture of me and the audio along with it. You can do that on YouTube. You can also subscribe to the podcast through your podcast app so that you never, ever miss, any of the interviews. So richvaldez.com, that's where we go for that. And, of course, you can always just click the Listen Live button to hear the show live every day. All right, amigos, coming right back. Don't move a muscle. I'm Rich Valdez.
Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our discussion about the Epstein files. And, of course, this is, developing stuff. Came out a couple hours ago. So far, I don't see any big name drops. I think there might be some significant legal implications. And to set the stage for that, Alina Habba was doing an interview a couple hours ago with Piers Morgan. And here's what she had to say.
Jeffrey Epstein files, we're told, are to be imminently unleashed. And already we saw the Attorney General Pam Bondi say that the scale of what happened is far worse than anyone realized. Well over 200, maybe 250 victims, and that we're going to get information either later today or tomorrow from these files. What can you tell me about that?
I believe it will be today. I was just I saw Pam and Cash in the White House just before coming on your show. And I can tell you that I haven't been privy to it yet, but I know it is coming out. They will be taking portions of it. We have to be patient. And I said this last night at a dinner with some media. And I said, I think America needs to remember one thing. We are going to be promises made, promises kept. But when you're dealing with victims, and by the way, this is a perfect example of a case that was vetted, that went through trial, that had testimony, and was prosecuted the right way. I don't preemptively attack. That's just not the way I operate. But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Now, this is interesting. Why would the flight logs be important? Now, you would think, well, so you know who's on the plane. Okay, got it. Why else? Well, I think there's some legal implications here. And why do I think that? Why? Because I've been texting back and forth with my lawyer friends. And one of my lawyer friends, Mark Capitan, he says that he thinks a lot of people's rear ends are puckering up. And they're probably looking for really good lawyers right now. And he has a hunch that perhaps the reason they're focused on this, on who was on the plane, is because people right now get in trouble if you're an American citizen and you go to Thailand for the purpose of sexual tourism, you get charged with a federal crime in the United States. So if people were not just going to these fun Diddy-style parties at Epstein's famous island on the Lolita Express, his plane, but they were going with the express intent of engaging in being with underage girls, then now a whole world of hurt has opened up here. Now, yes, that may be a crime in the Virgin Islands or wherever they are, but it may also be a crime in the United States for going there for that purpose, right? So this would be a jurisdictional issue. And I'm unaware of this, but this is an interesting thing, right? Would it be solely a state prosecution, or would it be something about crossing some sort of state or international line so that the federal implications can be more significant? And with Attorney General Pam Bondi being involved, I would tend to guess that's probably the case. So if you're in the U.S. Virgin Islands, anybody that's caught crossing the jurisdictional lines for the purpose of acts of sex can have these implications, right? And I guess we're all waiting to see, what's going to happen here, because obviously Epstein was running a very sophisticated sex trafficking operation, and he was very clear and clever in how he conducted the meetings, where this stuff took place, to avoid prosecution for him and his clientele. But now that we have some of this information and some of these people aren't here, maybe that all that's left is to prosecute the Johns per se. So we'll see. I don't know. But it could be that the motivation or the appetite for this type of underage sex on Epstein's private island clouded the judgment of the people that were trying to cover their tracks. And then they might get charged with the federal crime in the United States. And that's why the flight logs are so important. It's not so much so they can go, oh, yeah, I knew him. Everybody, who's who and what's what, everybody knew. Everybody's been on the island. And I understand that part. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people there that are innocent, that were invited by a rich man with a plane and his own island and said, hey, look, I'm having a party. I need you to be there. People do that to me, right? And I'm nobody big like that. But there are people saying, oh, look, I'm having a party. I want you to, I'm having a fundraiser. I want you at a table. You know, I got some people that are fans of your show or whatever, and, you know, whatever it is. And they'll have somebody interesting at each table. You know, if they know an Olympian, they'll bring an Olympian in. And people will talk and take pictures with them and whatever. And it's a very common thing. Now, unbeknownst to many of the people that are there to support a cause with their presence, there might be people that are there with an illicit cause. So I get it when people say, yeah, I went to Epstein Island, but I didn't go there for that. Yeah, I'm sure you didn't. You know, you probably went there because you're famous. And then they wanted to say, oh, look, you know who's at my party? Look, so-and-so's at my party. I got the best celebrities here. Come on, you want to come. It's a great party. I get it. But the flight logs are still going to be important because of that jurisdictional issue. Anyway, let us continue. Let's continue with this Alina Habba audio with Piers Morgan.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway. We don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Kash and Pam, there will be accountability.
And we know that only one person so far has actually gone to prison over that whole scandal. It was Ghislaine Maxwell, the former lover of Jeffrey Epstein. No man so far has actually been put in prison as a result of what happened. Do you think by releasing information from these files, we are likely to see criminal actions being taken?
Absolutely.
Really?
I think it would be negligent for us not to. You have to hold individuals who are indeed rapists accountable. We have to have them tried, in my opinion. And I do believe in that. You know, nobody should be just dismissed. You have to have your time in court and your case will be heard. But to hide lists, to protect political friends, all of that, we don't have time for that.
Woo! Strong words coming from White House counselor Alina Habba. And I think I'm in agreement with her on this, right? She basically said, look, everybody here is innocent until they're proven guilty. They will have their day in court. But we're going to follow the evidence, and we're going to see what's going on, and we're not going to protect people based on who they know. And I think that's probably fair. And there are lots of names on this flight log. It doesn't mean that those people are all going to be indicted for anything. But she used the word, rapists. If people were, in fact, engaging in statutory rape because they knowingly engaged with these quote-unquote massages from underage girls who are being trafficked and held on this island for their illicit purposes, then yes, these are rapists. And whatever statutory obligation or capability that they have in prosecuting someone going to the Virgin Islands or elsewhere to engage in this is a good thing. And this fundamentally, and I love what she chose her words well and she used them well. She said it's about accountability, and for too long we've been dodging it. I agree. That's a good blanket statement. But when you break it down a little further, it's not just about dodging accountability, but it's about really blurring the lines and muddying the waters. And by that, I mean, for a very long time, too long, we've taken the focus off of a lot of things. There was a time when if you went soliciting prostitution, you'd be arrested. There was one of the prostitutes was an undercover cop, and you'd go and they'd lock you up, right? We've seen it on TV a million times. That changed. And they were locking you up and they were locking up the prostitutes. Then in recent years, they've become incredibly sympathetic towards the prostitutes because they've realized they're not working for themselves. They're usually working because they've been coerced to work by a trafficker, someone that is threatening their family back home some way, somehow, or leveraging their own addiction and saying, look, you got to do this all day so I can give you some of your drugs later, or whatever the case may be, right? So, and I get that. If you can get a prostitute to turn on the pimp, the trafficker, and work with you, this is a win all around. I get that part too. And I think ultimately what happens is you just have to, you charge the people that you have evidence to charge. And you say, well, you know, we have reason to believe that you went to Epstein Island on the Lolita Express, his private jet, to engage with this and this and this. And we have, you know, these witnesses, and they're going to make their case, and let the chips fall where they may, right? That's the only thing I think that can happen, and I think that's what's going to happen. But ultimately, we've changed the narrative. And by we, I mean the left within the media, the left within law enforcement, the left within electoral politics. They've changed the name of prostitution to sex work, trying to soften the blow a little bit, right? And if you're a person that's, I don't know, coerced or kidnapped from your home to go and engage in sex that you don't want to have because you're being coerced by someone saying, you know, you better do this or we're going to go kill your little brother, your mom, your uncle, burn your whole village, whatever it is. I see people engaging in those things. And these are slaves, right? Sex slaves. I don't know if that's 100% of the case, but that happens. And we know that it happens. And we've talked to people on this program who that's happened to. So I'm not an ostrich. My head is not buried in the sand. But we also have a very activist left-leaning movement where we want to normalize sex work, where it's never charged as a crime, where it's decriminalized completely, and where we normalize it. And worse, we work to destigmatize it at taxpayer expense. So I want to talk about that straight ahead. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. America, going to your calls in seconds. But I wanted to, I just spoke a little bit about the destigmatization of what they call sex work, what I call prostitution. And I think the words that we use have meaning, and we've got to be careful on how we soften certain words to inoculate them, right? These things are still crimes, and we have to, you know, prostitution's not good, and people being forced into prostitution is even worse, right? One thing doesn't make the other thing right, but they're all wrong. And I want to get your thoughts on this, but I also want to play you a clip of audio I've got of a woman who was on social media explaining that the Doge Committee discovered that there was some spending going on into this destigmatization, but I think I'll do that at the top of the hour. Right now, I want to go to John in Alexandria, Virginia on WMAL. John, go right ahead. What are your thoughts on this Epstein stuff?
Well, I'll turn down my radio. I'm sorry. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
The first thing that comes to mind is, you mentioned about the flight logs, and I agree with you, but they also eliminate someone's, have an alibi. I wasn't there. I mean, here's proof that you were. And I mean, we started to hear stories about, who was going to the island there when the story originally broke. And, the first person that comes to mind is Bill Clinton, of multiple trips, and Hillary Clinton. And then that brings up questions of his murder. Okay. There's a lot of mystery surrounding that. He complained when he was in the jails that he was beat up one time, that he had a pillow over his head. And and then there was too many circumstances that surrounding his death, that there was no jail guards and all this sort of stuff. So that certainly brings to question that. And I think that's going to...
I agree. A lot of funny stuff, a lot of fishy stuff going on. So I don't know, but do you think there'll be any surprises, any additions to the list?
Well, I think you bring up another great point, too. It's sort of like Great Gatsby. You know, people wanted to be seen. This was a party, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like P. Diddy and, you know, sort of took up after that. And people wanted to be seen at those parties, and all that stuff was going on, too, the craziness, the criminality. And so, you know, that's all. This is all happening at the same time. And you know, it's all coming to bear. And I think you saw, you know, Bill Gates was, you know, discussions about him being on the roster there. And, you know, when the story broke out a couple weeks after there.
Right.
You know,
I wonder what the implications, right, John, are going to be with Bill Gates. Will he be questioned? Will he be charged? What will go on? These are the things that I think, you know, when I hear Alina Habba saying, we're going to, you know, in many ways, she said, you know, we have a process. And what I got from that was innocent until proven guilty, you know, but we're going to follow the facts. And yeah, I think those that were on that plane, whomever they be, whomever they were related to, whomever they're affiliated with, they're all on notice. John in Alexandria, I got to stop right here. I'm going to come right back. We got more calls from Virginia coming up right after this.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we continue our conversation. We keep it in Virginia, WMAL in the building. Thanks to the last caller, by the way. And I want to go to the new one, Dan. Dan's calling us from Winchester, Virginia. Dan, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I had a strategy that I think that Trump, Bondi, and Kash Patel is going for. Now, today I read something about Adam Schiff going to that island like 5 or more times. I think since they can't get him through the J6 or the Russian hoax thing, you know, because of pardons, I think that they're going to go for this. And since Adam Schiff has connections with the FBI and the New York field office is kind of holding back, I think there's some information there that can bring him down, and I think they're going to politically take out a senator.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Again, the only way to really take out, I mean, he could be convicted of murder tomorrow and even plead guilty to it. And until the judge says you're going to be sentenced on this date and start your jail time on that date, he'll still be a senator unless he's impeached. So it's not like he's going to lose his job, and he just got it. So he's good for 6 years. And I don't think his name was on the list. I don't think there was any mention of Adam Schiff on any of the Epstein lists. So we'll see if there's any reality to what you're talking about. But we're going to find out tomorrow. Anyway, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Let us continue. We will continue the conversation with you all, the American people. Straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And I want to welcome you to the Thursday night edition of the program. It's 7 minutes past 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And happy to be here live and national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. If you want to join us, we're live and national, taking your calls, open phones across America. You get to weigh in on everything we're talking about. And we've had some discussion on everything from the Doge Committee to the destigmatization of sex work to so much more. Like Epstein and the Epstein files and conversation with Abe Hamadeh, the congressman from Arizona. Make sure you don't miss that or don't forget that. And more to come, right? We're going to talk about a lot of things. So right here, I want to talk about a couple of things. Of course, President Trump entertained the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom today in the White House. And it was an interesting conversation, right? Because, he, in true Trump form, he was not, just dishing out platitudes. This was not something that I think was, done for just the sake of doing. This is something that, needed to be done. And Vice President J.D. Vance also right to his face telling him that, I don't like what you're doing with free speech. So very, very interesting time. Trump speaking about tariffs on Mexico, tariffs on Canada, and doubling the tariff on China. All of that happened. Of course, the Epstein files were released. Most of this was declassified already, but I guess that which wasn't has been. And I surmise that the federal government is going to be going after people for pursuing sex in the Virgin Islands or whatever island group the Epstein Island belongs to, and doing so criminally. And good for them. I hope that it works out. And something I was saying before, and I'll reiterate here, is that there's been a lot of talk about the stigma attached to sex work. And I think the reason there's stigma on sex work is because there should be. Nobody should, they say, it's the oldest profession. If people get into that as a profession, I am going to sell my body for men for sex or vice versa. This is not an honorable thing. Dare I say it's not even professional. But irrespective of the morality of it, if you want to call it a profession, I guess you're allowed to. I wouldn't. But the bigger issue here is these underage girls that are being labeled as masseuses in the Epstein operation. One has to ask the question, are these girls really of sound mind? Are they well? Are they adult? Are they sober enough to say, I chose of my own will and free will and volition to be here to engage in these creepy massages with old, rich, famous men? Maybe they do. I would venture to say that they probably didn't, at least not at first. Maybe it's something they became accustomed to, and maybe some of them wanted to do it. But I would say the vast majority were not interested. So the question becomes, when you're doing criminal actions here, do you charge these underage girls, 14 years old, 16 years old, that are engaging in the quote-unquote massage, maybe better known as sex, with these people, which could be rich, could be famous, could be connected to the rich and famous? These are obviously, I would say no. How are you going to? These are the victims in the crime, right? These girls are the victims. How could you charge them with a crime? And I get that. I really do. That doesn't mean that I don't think it's never not a crime, right? That it's always not a crime. I shouldn't use a double negative. When someone is engaging in quote-unquote sex work. So I think softening the language to call it sex work is not beneficial and not wise. But there's a group called Gays Against Groomers. It's a group of homosexuals that fight against wokeism within their movement, within the gay and lesbian movement. And they put out a video that someone sent to me, and I thought it was fantastic, and I want you to hear it. Listen to this.
Doge has officially entered the Department of Education and found a doozy. Our taxpayer dollars have been founding an NGO which argues that educators should destigmatize sex work, especially for queer, trans people of color, and LGBT youth. This NGO is teaching public school districts that prostitution is essential for survival. Yes, you heard me right, but listen with your own ears.
Our third point that we do bring up and cover in this mini presentation is understanding the importance of sex work in the LGBT plus community and in LGBT youth survival.
The Department of Education also granted $25 million to the National Comprehensive Center, which promotes the idea that male and female are false categories.
If staff members could move away from the binary and not just say things like, you know, let's split into two teams, girls versus boys. Why not instead use non-heteronormative language like, hey, party people, let's get ready to do this activity.
You can't see my head exploding right now, but it is. What you can see is that those in power have a vested interest in this agenda. We cannot stand by and celebrate the indoctrination and sexualization of children. Parents, understand that this movement is not about trans kids' health rights. It's part of a larger agenda, not just to create lifelong patience, but to dismantle the traditional definition of what it means to be human and introduce divergent identities. This is the overtone window effect in action. What you're witnessing isn't their ultimate goal. It's a strategy to acclimate you to the ideas they truly intend to implement. Meanwhile, ask yourself, if this is the solution that we are being sold, why are youth mental health issues at staggering and rising levels?
Very interesting stuff here, right? So the question, I think, remains, what happens with this Epstein list and what are we going to do? And I think that there's an active push to destigmatize this because they want to normalize, right? You heard what this woman said, and I hope you're paying attention because I thought it was remarkable when she said that sex work is vital to the trans and LGBTQ community. What community does one belong to where it's vital? I can tell you, prison. Prison is a situation where they call it survival sex. Many people will engage in that to survive. But on the outside world, we shouldn't be in a situation where we're selling the idea at government at the government level with taxpayer dollars, where we're saying, look, we've got to explain to people in different in schools and this and that it's very important that we support the sex workers. What are you thinking? This is just a push to normalize queer ideology, to normalize sex work, to normalize the decriminalization of sex work. I mean, guess what happens if it's not a crime for you to engage in sex work? That's on both sides. That means everybody that they're talking about going after for Jeffrey Epstein, they're not going to go after them because it's no longer a crime. Now you can say, well, Rich, these girls were underage. Okay, perhaps. I get that they were. But if nobody's looking because it's not a crime, then it's not a crime. And people are just going to be, oh, yeah, Who does this benefit? The same people that we've been protecting. And by we, I mean those who hid this list from plain view for as long as they did. Right? Those are the ones that took care of Jeffrey Epstein. Those are the ones that are, playing defense here. So very, very interesting stuff that's going on indeed. Now, I want to talk about what happens to these people that are engaged in sex work or anybody else that's been through something traumatic. Well, oftentimes they go to therapy. But interestingly, we have a movement of psychotherapy in our country, mental health support, that's been hijacked It's been hijacked by the radical left, and people might have gone in there saying, "Look, I'm confused. I don't know what I think about this and that." And it's, we'll give you some estrogen. We'll turn you into a girl, right? Or if you're a girl, we'll give you some testosterone. We'll turn you into a boy. We can do some surgery. That's the way we fix things around here. This radicalization of mental health counseling in America is problematic and must end. So I want to speak with the founder of the Mental Health First Initiative. Happens to also be a man of the cloth. He's a rabbi, and we're going to have a conversation about his book, which interestingly is titled Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul, a guide to finding meaning and emotional wellness. And I think that's ultimately what people should be seeking in counseling, not a way to normalize whatever deviance or demons they might be fighting. And I think, sadly, that's what happens when the left takes over and kind of hijacks a movement. So we're going to talk with our guest momentarily. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, and I want to play a clip for you. The very renowned Viktor Frankl. He is an Austrian neurologist and psychologist and philosopher who's also a Holocaust survivor. He has a nugget of wisdom that I want to share with you. Listen to this.
If you don't recognize a young man's will to meaning, man's search for meaning, you make him worse, you make him dull, you make him frustrated, you still add and contribute to his frustration. While if you presuppose in this man, if in this so-called criminal or juvenile delinquent or drug abuse and so forth, there must be a what we call spark, a spark of search for meaning. Let's recognize this. Let's presuppose it. And then you will elicit it from him, and you will make him become what he in principle is capable of becoming.
Viktor Frankl was, I think, spot on so many things, whether it was what his philosophy on the attitude that people take towards unavoidable suffering, whether it was his overall outlook on why one exists and how we kind of exist in this world, and so much more in his contributions to psychotherapy, I think are missing today. I think people have missed the mark on that. And instead of focusing on one's existence and why they were called to exist by their creator, it's more of a woe is me approach, embracing being victimized. And this obviously is causing lots of problems in mental health across the country. And that's why I want to talk to our guest. Our guest is also a mental health counselor, and he is the founder of the Mental Health First Initiative and the author of the book, Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul, a guide to finding meaning and emotional wellness. Daniel Schonbuch, welcome.
Great. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you, sir. Now, I want to get your take on what I was talking about prior to our commercial break, which was how the leftward movement in America, the radical left, has hijacked psychotherapy and what the results of that are. Your thoughts?
Well, for over 100 years, therapy has been hijacked by leftist ideology. I believe that most therapists focus on things like self-love, self-affirmation, self-esteem, but they completely ignore what people really need, which is meaning. And that's why I wrote a book about Viktor Frankl, who was a great Holocaust survivor, psychiatrist. And he found in the camps that those who had a meaning they're going to fulfill in the future, to love somebody, to focus on a value, to focus on a meaningful experience, were most apt to survive the Holocaust. And I think that's a great lesson for the things that we're facing in society today.
Now, Daniel, I think that, that was a really well put statement. What are some of the things that I guess you recommend towards improving that situation?
Well, instead of teaching resilience, responsibility, and meaning, psychology has been promoting victimhood, entitlement, and endless self-focus. So what I suggest, and this is what I do with my clients who have problems like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and addiction, I want them to focus on their values. That's what I do in my book, and that's what I do with therapy. I have them think about things like values like honesty, growth, inner harmony, justice, and kindness. I have them pick in my book from a menu of meaningful experiences, loving somebody else, experiencing something important in their lives, taking on some spiritual thing they want to do during the week. And I find quite rapidly in therapy, when I focus on values, meaning, and spirituality and their soul, they seem to change more rapidly. So I believe we have to change the discussion from the self to what Viktor Frankl is talking about, is to go beyond the self.
Well, I love that. I want to explore that a little more. Folks, the book is Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul, a guide to finding meaning and emotional wellness. The author is Daniel Schonbuch. He's a rabbi and a psychotherapist, and he's with us tonight. He's the founder of the Mental Health First Initiative. Tell us a little bit about the Mental Health First Initiative before we continue talking about the book.
Well, I'm trying to promote this idea that Viktor Frankl really was a prophet for what society is focusing on today. It's just terrible meaninglessness. He prophesied this many years ago. He was a great opponent of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, who dominated psychotherapy, said that man in his essence had something called an id, which was pleasure and destruction. And Viktor Frankl pointed out that man has something called a religio, which few people know about. Religio is the unconscious drive for God and godliness. So what we need to talk to people, which we do in our organization through our training programs, is teach people how to talk about meaning in therapy. When I went to graduate school over many years, Viktor Frankl was never mentioned. The topic of meaning, God was never even mentioned. They wanted to talk about the self, about one's childhood. That's what Sigmund Freud did. Viktor Frankl was fighting that battle. And he says, no, we have to talk about things beyond ourselves. And that's what my organization is trying to talk to therapists and other people to start focusing on.
Something greater than oneself. Makes a lot of sense. Daniel Schonbuch is our guest. Again, the book, Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul, a guide to finding meaning and emotional wellness. I recommend getting a copy of the book for yourself. Fascinating topic, and a copy to give away to someone else. And folks, we're coming right back with Daniel Schonbuch right after this. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company till midnight in some areas, 1 o'clock in the morning in other areas. And our phone number is 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337, getting to your calls momentarily. But first, I want to get some final thoughts from Daniel Schonbuch, who is a psychotherapist and founder of the Mental Health First Initiative. He's also the author of the book, Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul. And Rabbi, I want to get your take on, I guess, the main point, the main takeaway that you haven't discussed yet with us on the book. When somebody buys a copy of the book or a couple of copies, one as a gift, what do you expect them to walk away with?
Well, at the back of my book, I have a 30-day logotherapy, the therapy of meaning workbook. And I have people journal for 30 days about finding meaning in their lives. I have them choose some values that are important to them, choose some meaningful experiences, and then I have them write about them every day. I have them ask the question, did I follow my values today? Did I fulfill something of meaning in my life? And my prediction is if somebody reads my book and does that 30-day journal, they're going to have reduced rates of depression, reduced rates of anxiety, and as well perhaps even overcome addiction because they're finding more meaning in their lives.
Fascinating. I'm really intrigued by it. I for one, am definitely going to grab a copy of the book and check it out because I think these types of interactive things are very helpful. I once read a book on psychology that had something similar at the end. It wasn't more of a journal. It was more of like a prompt. It prompted you in different directions, but it really got my thinking going in different directions where I realized, there were times where I thought I was just set in my ways. I'm just a jerk with certain things, or I just tend to lose my head in traffic and whatever it was. And I realized, I don't have to be that way. We all possess the ability to bring about a better change when our focus is on something other than ourselves, kind of what you talked about earlier. Now, for people that want to get a copy of the book, do they go to your website? Where do you recommend they go?
Yeah, they go to my website, healwithmeaning.com, or on Amazon.com.
And if anybody wants to keep up to speed with the work that you're doing with the Mental Health First Initiative or future books or new editions of this book, do they go to the same website or is there a social media handle? What do you recommend?
Yeah, they go to healwithmeaning.com. I have updates, I have news and information and upcoming training programs as well. And I'm happy to talk to people and answer any questions they may have.
Outstanding. Well, Rabbi Daniel Schonbuch, psychotherapist and founder of the Mental Health First Initiative and author of the book Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul, I want to thank you for being with us. I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So Godspeed to you, sir.
God bless you.
You bet. And amigos, I want to go to your calls. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And let us go to an audio clip of what happened with Gene Hackman. Listen to this.
The Santa Fe Sheriff's Office detailing why deputies needed to go into Hackman's home and what they actually found when they went inside.
All I can say is they have been deceased for quite a while.
Just before 1:45 in the afternoon yesterday, maintenance workers called 911 after finding Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, dead in their home.
Santa Fe 911, what is it? Emergency?
I think we just found one deceased person inside the house.
Deputies say the front door of the home was open with no forced entry.
Are they breathing?
I have no idea. I'm not inside the house. It's closed. It's locked. I can't go in. But I see them. She's laying down on a floor from the window.
Betsy was discovered inside a bathroom with a prescription bottle on the counter and pills scattered everywhere. A space heater also found on the floor near her head. According to the warrant, it could have fallen in the event that she abruptly fell to the ground. A German Shepherd found 10 to 15 feet away from Betsy, dead inside a closet in the bathroom.
It's not normal to find two people deceased in the residence. That's concerning. And then there was also a dog that was in a kennel that was also found deceased.
Deputies then finding Gene near the kitchen area in what they believe is the mudroom. A pair of sunglasses found near his body. Deputies think he also suddenly fell. As deputies cleared the rest of the home, they found 2 other dogs alive, and all other buildings and the garage were secured. Nothing appeared to be rummaged through or out of place. The Santa Fe Fire Department also called and found no signs of a carbon monoxide leak or poisoning. New Mexico Gas also saying they did not find any issues with the gas pipes around the home.
Well, that is pretty interesting stuff, right? Gene Hackman found dead. I don't know if the prescription drug stuff is something that they're going to, follow up on and tell us more about later. They're investigating this as quote unquote suspicious. My thinking sounds like a gas leak, but now I'm finding out that they're saying there was no gas leak. So very interested in finding out what the outcome will be here. Gene Hackman being 95 years old. Anyway, your thoughts on this. Let's go to Walter in St. Augustine, Florida, WFOY. Walter, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. As you mentioned about Gene Hackman, a very good actor, died today. He played Popeye Doyle in A French Connection, and many people don't realize that this was a true story. It was really about real-life NYPD Detective Eddie Egan, the one who managed 112 pounds of heroin bust in 62. I'm sure your brothers, was it Johnny and Alfred, NYPD, they can tell you more about the realness of this movie, Rich. And I'm sure you've seen it.
I interviewed somebody who was connected to the real-life French Connection case a couple of years ago. And but you're right. I could definitely talk to Al and John about that. Thank you, Walter. I appreciate it. And my condolences to Gene Hackman and his family. Shout out to everybody in St. Augustine, Florida, WFOY. And folks, we come back with more of your calls. I see we got calls from Maryland, from WVMT, and more coming in. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Ever since I've taken this position, the only thing I care about is doing right by the warfighters, by the troops. In short, we want the biggest, most badass military on the planet, on God's green earth. They're going to have broad access. Obviously, with all the safeguards on classification, they know that. Many of them are vets. They care just like we do. To find the redundancies and identify the last vestiges of Biden priorities, the DEI, the woke, the climate change BS, that's not core to our mission, and we're going to get rid of it all.
That is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth talking about the elimination of DEI. And I tend to agree with him. You got to focus on the mission. These men are soldiers, what he calls war fighters, and they should be focused on fighting and winning wars in more ways than one, right? Not just conventional hot war battle. Let's get your thoughts on this. Let's go to Cumberland, Maryland, WCBC, and check in with our buddy Frank. Frank, go right ahead, sir.
Well, if Pete Hegseth wants to get rid of DEI in the armed forces, how about getting rid of DEI at the wellsprings, the fountainhead of our laws, which is Congress? We've got the Black Congressional Caucus. We've got the Hispanic Congressional Caucus. That's racial discrimination. It's against the law. It's against the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It's against the Constitution, and it's against common morality. Why is Congress doing this when no one else can?
Well, I think there's some nuance there, and I'm not defending that. I could care less for either of those caucuses, but I will say that it is it's different, right? I don't think that they're using diversity, equity, and inclusion to give either of them an unfair or competitive advantage. I think all they're doing is just allowing them to caucus together, kind of like AOC and Bernie Sanders caucus together because they're Democrat socialists. So I think that's how that kind of works there. I don't think they're violating the Constitution or anything like that because they're not doing anything. And they're not being, quote unquote, hired by their constituents, right, or elected by their constituents because of their race. And if they were, it would be it's we the people that is engaging in DEI at that moment based on race, not the actual federal government. So I don't think there would be illegality there. But I agree with you in that we should always try to be a little bit more inclusive with when it comes to patriotism, when it comes to Americanism. I love the expression, we all bleed red, white, and blue, and I think that's appropriate. And I don't think that we should also abandon, right? You know, the idea of a melting pot is a nice idea, I guess, but I don't think that, you should lose your heritage, nor should I lose mine. I think we can coexist as Americans, and we should both love our country. But I, for one, am not going to abandon, pernil and rice and beans and alcapurrias and all the other, wonderful cuisine that comes from the island of Puerto Rico. or the culture and customs and traditions from, where my parents were born and how I was brought up. I think those things are beautiful and they're nice and they're fun, and I enjoy them. And I think whatever you may or may not like from your culture, same thing. I don't think we need to lose our culture, but I think we should also not alienate our, shared culture as Americans. Mom, the flag, apple pie. These are things that, we need to not turn our back on either, if that makes any sense.
Well, we both know darn well there isn't going to be a white congressional caucus, right?
Yeah, right. And that's why I'm against the other ones, because I think if we, the society, were to say, go ahead, have a white congressional caucus, I'd be okay with it, honestly. I would see that people would freak out about it because they'd say, well, of course there's going to be a white congressional caucus. This is a white country, which I believe. This is a white country. It was started by a bunch of white guys. These guys were white Europeans that came here as colonists and started a country, rebelled against the crown. So I get it. They're the majority. Everybody else is in the minority. Makes sense to me that they're the default. However, if you're going to take the liberty to say this is the Hispanic caucus, the black caucus, then you should not get upset if there is a white caucus. I get, like I said, I could see people pushing back on that, saying, well, of course, all of Congress is the white caucus. I get that, but you really shouldn't be up in arms about it. I think, like my thoughts on free speech, you got to take the good with the bad. If I want to talk about I like Trump, I have to be able to listen to why Hitler had a point, or why the X, Y, and Z group is really the downfall of society, because that's your right as much as it is mine to disagree, right, Frank?
It's not a white country anymore. In Maryland, whites are in a minority, and it's true in several other states as well.
We're in Maryland, yeah,
yeah.
That may be the case, but I think by and large across the country, Hispanics are still a minority. They might be the largest minority, taking over blacks, I think, 2 years ago, but still not, by any means the majority. And I'm pretty sure at one point that may happen based solely on population. Hispanics tend to have larger families than our black and white counterparts. And this is something I did research on when I was in college back in the early 2000s. And I thought to myself, why? Is it economic? Is it this? But it can't, you can't blame it on economics. I think it's really lifestyle choice. It's really just people figured out I don't want to have a larger house, or I don't want to have kids crammed up in a room, or whatever the case was. But people have decided we went from 4 kids to 2 kids, or I would even argue we went from 6 kids to 4 kids to 2 kids. And I think the number right now amongst Hispanics, at least within the last 10 years, I think was 2.5 kids per family. And you had whites and blacks respectively, and Asians as well. I think we're tied with whites or with blacks at 1.5 and 1, or even 0.5. And that may have fluctuated a little bit, but I think the percentages are probably still accurate, that the rate of reproduction is just not there amongst the majority, which is why there's constantly news coming out saying we have a problem with our birth rate. We're not populating as much as we used to. And this gives rise to conspiracy theorists that want to talk about, depopulation and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think it's all about what you value, right? What are one's values? And I know for me and all of my friends that were brought up the way we all came from pretty, large families, and maybe you don't have 4 kids, but I think 2 kids is pretty much the norm. I only have a handful of friends that are Hispanic that only have 1 kid. That's, I would say, an anomaly, not the norm. So I think if we want to have more kids, we should have more kids. And I think J.D. Vance brought that up during the campaign, saying we're going to have a bunch of spinsters out there, a bunch of childless cat ladies running the show. And he wasn't talking about Hispanic women or black women. He was talking specifically about white women, probably more specifically liberal white women, because they are leading the way with not having children. Frank.
Well, let's hear what the other callers think.
Yeah, I love it. Good topic. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. WCBC, Cumberland, Maryland. I got to take a pause right here, but we're going to come back and go to Arkansas and Canada, and I think we have room for one more, maybe. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
Let's go to Salem, Arkansas. KSAR. Check in with Joe. Go right ahead, sir.
Thanks, Rich. I don't see any convictions coming out of the Epstein investigation. They got a lot of lawyers involved that are probably perpetrators, and they all planned this so that they would have jurisdictional issues and venue issues. And these kids and young people, it's been so long, I don't see them being able to prove where they were when the offense took place and what the laws were. And it's all under maritime. That's why they did it on jets. Whatever they did, and his island, that's private jurisdiction, so you're back to maritime. This is all maritime jurisdiction. So
yeah, I think the only angle they've got here is if they can prove that American citizens left the United States with the intention of going there to engage in illicit and illegal, what would be illegal sex here, violating a federal law here, crossing international lines, like going to Thailand, right? Because we have that same rule with Thailand. And if they can use that rule here and there's no statute of limitations on it, then they've got something that they can work with. They just have to prove that they went there for that purpose. And that might be as easy as getting one of these girls that was there to become a witness and say, yep, gave that one a quote-unquote massage, I gave that one a quote-unquote massage, etc. So I don't know. The level of certitude in Alina Habba's voice seemed like she knew more than she was letting on. And I rewind back to the summer when she was asked questions about what do you think the outcome of this case is going to be. And I think she was accurate on those too, where she would say, look, we're in a Democrat stronghold where we don't have input on the jury, blah, 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 blah. I'd be surprised if we can even win this thing. She was right on a lot of those where she called it that way. So I think on this one, she's saying it's shocking and we're going to be very surprised. And I believe we will be. Do I think it's going to be P. Diddy level arrests? Probably not, Joe. It's probably going to be some people we haven't heard of. But you never know. There might be a couple of big names on there that get some charges brought against them. We'll find out soon enough. I can't imagine this taking more than 72 hours for us to find out. So, Joe in Salem, Arkansas, thank you for the call. KSAR in the building, and my apologies to anybody on hold. The music's coming in. That means I got to go, but I appreciate all of you. Shout out to our buddy Tony in Montreal, WVMT, and everybody else that's calling. I see calls coming in right now, even with seconds to go on the clock, so thank you for that. I appreciate you participating. And of course, I say hasta la próxima, which means until next time in Spanish. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.